Look at this image. It's one of the most bizarre crashes in Formula 1 history. The driver is Sebastian Buemi, and he is driving down the back straight in Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix in 2010. At the end of the straight, travelling at over 200 miles per hour, he hits the brakes, and bang, both wheels fly off. He lost both front wheels at exactly the same moment, which is completely bizarre. So I did some digging into what on earth caused this. Oh, and we spoke to the driver himself to find out. First, this is clearly a suspension failure, but they don't normally happen like this. Normally, if the suspension is to fail, it's a wishbone or a pushrod, the more fragile parts of the suspension, but this seems to be much worse than that. So to figure this out, we need to look at a load of factors. First thing I thought was about the track. Yes, I know it seems to be a car failure, but I had a slight hunch about what was going on. Now, the straight at Shanghai is extremely long, 1.1 kilometers long, and one of the longest in F1. On top of that, the cars enter the straight off the back of turn 13, a corner that gradually opens up. So the cars are doing 140 miles an hour before they even start the straight, meaning they're doing just over 200 miles an hour at the braking zone. Now, here's my hunch. At the bottom of the straight, the cars are as heavily loaded as they are ever going to be. This track requires medium to high downforce and has incredible top speed. So the car is producing the absolute most downforce that it can. If anything is ever going to break, it's going to happen here. Doing some maths, the car and the driver weigh around 850 kilograms. Then apply about 6G of braking to that, and you get around 5 tons of stopping force being placed onto that tarmac. This is so much that when repeated by 20 cars, lap after lap, that it can actually start to ripple up the tarmac at the very start of the braking zone, where the drivers first slam on the brakes. And this happens quite frequently at other circuits as well. There was a bump in the braking zone at Spa that I've had to be careful of in the past, but this one seems to be much worse. And this bump at the point where the car is so heavily loaded could be a factor. And then I did some research into the track, and it's a weird one. It was built just outside Shanghai, and its proximity to the city was perfect for Formula 1. And of course, it goes without saying that it can't be easy to find a spot to build a racetrack, especially just outside a massive city. But this one was built on disused swampland. Yep, they built the track in Shrek's backyard. Anyway, you can't put tarmac on soft mud, so they dug that out and used a specialized expanding foam to build a platform to build the track on top of. And that's pretty bizarre. And that could be what caused this bump in the braking zone to be worse than at other circuits. But to be fair, that's all speculation. So I got researching and looked at many onboards to see if this bump was really there. And it certainly is. Look at this onboard from an LMP2 car. The bump in the braking zone looks incredibly violent. Then look at this. Some cars even appear to be braking off the racing line to avoid this bump. Next is the car. It's a 2010 Toro Rosso, and it was a weird year for them. The rules changed in 2009 for the 2010 season, and it hit Toro Rosso pretty badly. For this, the Toro Rosso was heavily based on the Red Bull, a really quick car at the time. Teams could essentially buy cars from other teams at the time, and so it made sense for Toro Rosso to base their car on the Red Bull, especially as they were owned by the same company, and of course how fast the Red Bull was. But in 2010 they weren't allowed to do this. The FIA limited the number of components teams could buy from one another, so Toro Rosso were mostly out on their own. For 2010 they had to design a car from scratch for the first time in a long while. Where the other teams were iterating on previous designs, Toro Rosso were at square one. And in early 2010, the car wasn't competitive. 3 rounds in and the team had only scored 4 points. So you might think that this upright was faulty, and although this was round 4, the track could have brought about this failure. But that didn't explain why both went at the same time. That was still a complete puzzle. So that was my theory, a perfect storm of the track, that bump, lots of downforce and components that weren't fully tested. But that is complete conjecture. So we reached out to Buemi himself, and he said yes to coming on the show. So we organised a Zoom call so you can all see what he has to say.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Buemi. I'm from Switzerland. I'm 34 years old, and I'm currently racing in Toyota WEC, as well as Formula E for Envision Racing. I used to do Formula 1 for Toro Rosso from 2009 until 2011. And in 2010, I had one of the most bizarre crashes in Formula 1 history.
Now, the first thing I wanted to know from Seb was what happened. What did he experience from inside the car?
Just went down there and braked where I thought I should brake, and there was nothing really special until obviously I hit the brake pedal, and we had the failure. You get to brake around 100 meters down there, and you brake hard, so you can imagine it's where you've got the most load on the car when you hit the brakes. So if something had to break, then it's very likely it would break there. So yeah, I just braked hard, and it felt like instantly lost both wheels. But I kept the hand on the steering wheel. I don't know if you've seen it on TV. I've kept the hands of the steering wheel, and yeah, obviously was not going to help much. Looks funny looking at it, but yeah, I guess it's your instinct. You're not meant to think that you may lose both wheels at the same time.
Now first, fair enough for counter steering. We would all do it. As a driver, it's hardwired into your mind. When a car begins to yaw, you counter steer. Simple as. Secondly, it seemed to let go out of absolutely nowhere. So maybe that adds up with my bump theory.
It's more likely to happen in those big braking, that it gets a little bit bumpy, but that still remains very smooth compared to some other tracks. I'm currently in Sebring, and I can tell you that the bumps here, they are from a different level. I would not say that it was very big or that it should trigger any real issues.
So there was a bump, but that likely wasn't what caused it. Then I looked at some of the reporting from the race, and Toro Rosso were testing out new parts. They put new uprights on both cars. They're the component that connect to the suspension members and support the wheel and brakes. And if that failed, it would look like this, with the wheels disappearing off and leaving you with nothing to steer or stop.
And basically, I guess like every Formula One team, you try to chase weight, you try to be at the weight limit, and clearly I think we were a tiny bit overweight, and we were trying to chase the limit, so we were introducing as soon as we could some lighter parts, basically. That's I think what led to the issue.
So they were running lighter components.
As always in Formula One, you have the technical meetings, and the engineers will tell you what is new on the car. Some stuff, obviously, you're not even going to feel anything. It's just weight saving or things that are not really related to the driver, and you listen to the list. And then, you go in the car and you just drive.
And the team later concluded that it was an upright failure.
Luckily, there was a big runoff as well, and I was lucky that this happened there. And then clearly, yeah, we had to revert to the previous part.
But that didn't really explain why both sides failed, until I had a bit of a deeper thought. With the aerodynamic load and the incredible braking load, you can see why a slightly weaker upright would let go. And if it did, all of the braking load would then be on the other single one, meaning that if it was defective, that would give up too. Looking back at the TV footage, the right upright fails first, and then a few tenths later, the second one goes. But watching it at full speed, it looks like Seb brakes and the wheels just eject themselves. And he was really lucky that the gravel trap stopped him. This crash was almost as puzzling as this one, and we made a video investigating that here. Thanks to CyberGhost for sponsoring this channel, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.